There is a lot going on in this short gospel story. Luke, the gospel writer, crams in a lot of the themes that he wants to communicate in his telling of this tale of Jesus healing these 10 lepers. 3 different things jumped out to me this week. The first of them actually coming right there at the last line. Jesus says to this healed person, "Your faith has made you well." It's a recurring line in Luke's gospel. Luke, who we often refer to as the physician, this idea that he is consumed by healing ministry because his gospel has the most healing stories of any of the gospels. And over again, 2 things are true. It is by the power of Jesus that these healings are accomplished. And Jesus says again and again, "Your faith has made you well." There's a sense in which these things seem opposed. Is it the people's faithfulness, or is it Jesus offering his power? But I think the point Luke is trying to make over and over again throughout his gospel is that these are not actually in conflict, but are a confluence. That the ministry of Jesus is in part all about showing up and telling humanity that we are going to be a part of the work. That the work of God that will be completed around us and in us will not just be done to us, but will be done through us. That if we as people look at the sickness of the world around us, at the illness of our society and of the people who surround us and think, man, wouldn't it be great if they got made well? That it will not simply be a miracle of God that makes it happen, but rather that we and our faithful lives and faithful action will be part of that healing. God will look at us and say, "Your faith has made us well." The next thing I noticed is there, in the middle of the story, there's this moment where it is suddenly revealed that one of the people is a Samaritan, or as Jesus refers to them, a foreigner. There's a cultural, contextual point that it's easy for us to miss here. If we only know about the Samaritans as characters in this story and that there's a good one out there in the gospel somewhere, we miss the piece where the Samaritans are, in many ways in the gospel, stand-ins for an ancient enemy. They are a stand-in for an ethnic enemy whose enmity goes back all the way to the time when the Israelites came out of the desert and looked across the Jordan River, and Moses and Joshua said, "There's the land that is promised for us." And one of the first things they noticed was there were a bunch of other people living on it. From that moment, a rivalry that would turn often violent began amongst 2 peoples. The Israelites, who viewed themselves as the chosen of God, promised this land and this place, promised that they would be able to expand, and that they alone were the central characters of the story God was writing with humanity. And these interlopers, these Canaanite peoples of various tribes and ethnic groups, these people who squatted on the land they long ago had been promised, these foreigners and nobodies in the story that God was writing. This attitude, this diametric view of the world as the people of God being the people of Israel and everybody else not mattering at all, continued all throughout their history. And then Jesus shows up, and something begins to change. Because it's an interesting point to notice that the first thing we hear about them being a foreigner or a Samaritan is when they turn back to say thank you. The group identified as 10 lepers isn't broken down by ethnicity or culture. We don't hear anything about the color of their skin or their sexuality. We don't hear what gods they believed in or didn't. We give no identifying factor other than there were 10 people and they were sick and hurting and they cried out for help, and Jesus told them to be healed. It's only when they return, when Jesus has a chance to teach a lesson to the people around him, that this man's ethnicity begins to matter. It's only when Jesus has an opportunity to point out to the disciples gathered and all those following him that his message of hope and forgiveness and healing and health is not limited merely to the small slice of humanity that they imagined, that it gets mentioned at all. It's a lesson we'd do well to take even today. That no matter our desires to slim down who the gospel applies to, no matter our wishes that perhaps those people that we hate were not in fact under the gracious goodness of God, no matter our desire to say God's grace extends this far and no further, those people are beyond forgiveness or redemption. No matter our human desire to build walls and dig ditches between each other, God wipes them all away. And again tells us his love is broader than we can imagine, his forgiveness more mighty than any river, his care and concern for us beyond the limitations of our minds. Jesus does not care that this man is a Samaritan. He simply tells him to go and be well. The last piece of this story that I think stands out to me is that one man comes back to say thank you. And I'll be honest with you, it's not the surprise that one man came back and 9 didn't. It's the surprise to me that Jesus healed 10 and anybody came back at all. There's a cultural context, again, that we're missing here. In our modern day, if you get sick, generally what happens is people rally around you. Especially with the interconnectedness of social media, if you throw up on Facebook that you're in the hospital for something, people from high school that you didn't even like that much are sending you well wishes. The community holds you up, and people want to remind you that they care for you, that you're a human being, that you're valued, loved. Compassion pours out like a mighty river. And of all places, your church family, if it's a church worth being a part of, lift you up and care for you. They offer prayers and their thoughts. They think about you and wonder how they could help. That's a very different experience than these lepers would have had. We have to remember that theologically, these lepers existed in a world that told them, if you are sick, it's because you are bad. If you are sick, it's because you are sinful. If you are sick, it means you are separate from the love of God. And whether your disease might be catching or not, your sinfulness certainly is. And so what all good, faithful, righteous people need to do is cut you out of their lives. Excise you. Not just from the family gathering, but from the community at all. You can live outside the city, beg outside the gates, but not in here with us, the good, healthy people. And so these sick people, cast out of their community, left on their own, cut off from their family, formed what little community they could. 10 of them, we're told, gathered together outside the gates, begging for the scraps they could receive, the last bit of mercy and compassion from their neighbors. And then they see this teacher. Maybe they've heard of him, maybe not, but one of them or many calls out, heal us, help us, make us whole. And Jesus speaks out and tells them, go and take yourself to the priest. And something in them makes them listen. And they get up and begin to go. And as they travel, they are made whole, healed, restored. And by the very nature of their theology, in that moment, they also imagine that they are reconciled to God. Once again, made holy, part of his sacramental body of people. They get to go back to their communities. Their lives now have a chance of possibility. They get to go home. And Jesus is surprised that only one comes back. Knowing humanity, isn't it a shock that anybody goes back at all? Because how often do we forget to say thank you? I don't know about you, but if I look back on my life and am honest, if I consider the breadth of my prayers, it is overwhelmingly prayers for something. When I was young, oh God, just let me pass this test. I'll never ask for anything again. As I got older, prayers for other people, prayers for things I needed, prayers for the world at large, prayers for something, for me, for others, for the community. But how rarely prayers of thanksgiving for all that I have. How much easier it is for us to ask God for something than to give thanks for what we have already received. There's a human piece to this. Also a selfish piece to this that desires to convince ourselves that the good things we have gotten are things we have worked hard for, we've deserved, we've earned in some way. And the bad things that happen to us, well, that's just crazy how that turned out. Perhaps Luke's gospel here is saying to each and every one of us to remember not only to pray for that we need, but to give thanks for all we have already been given. This gospel passage, in just a few short verses, reminds us that the love of God is broader than any limits we might put on it. Reminds us that we are called to be a part of the work God is going to do in the world. And reminds us to say thank you for all the work he has already done in our lives and in the lives of those we loved. In just one small miracle, God communicates all this. Amen.